Sound check, 1, 2, 3. Sound check, 1, 2, 3. Good afternoon, everyone. It's 12:30, and I would like to call our meeting to order. This is the Emergency Preparedness and Protective Services Committee. This is our 13th meeting of this term of council. The City of Ottawa is located on unceded and never surrendered territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe First Nations people. They have been inhabitants and stewards of these lands for millennia, and we honor and we recognize them. At this time, I would like to call on the committee coordinator to take a roll call, please.
Councillor Bradley.
Here.
Councillor Desroches.
Here.
Councillor Dudas.
I'm here.
Councillor Devine.
Here.
Councillor Johnson. Councillor Johnson. Councillor Luloff.
Happy Groundhog Day, Chris.
Conseillère Plante.
Oui.
Vice Chair Hill.
Present, thank you.
I believe I see Vice Chair Hill, or I saw Vice Chair Hill.
He was very quiet, but he did say that he was here.
And
I am
Chair
here.
Brockington.
The vice chair is now on, and I'm here as well.
You have quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Any declarations of interest? Seeing none, item 3 are the minutes from our last meeting on June 17th, 2024. Are the minutes of this committee meeting confirmed? Confirmed, thank you. Okay, response to inquiry. There was an inquiry with respect to vicious dogs. I just want to note that, and I don't see anyone asking for that to be lifted. So we will continue on. Item 5 is the snowplow contractor licensing review. Staff do have a presentation, so we will hold that for now. And item 6 is just the status update of committee inquiries and motions for the period ending 10 September 2024. Is that item received? Received, thank you. Okay, so one main item of substance for our committee meeting today, and that is item 5, which is the snowplow contractor licensing review. I will first turn again to our acting general manager to introduce this matter.
Thank you, Chair. The snowplow contractor licensing review is part of the work of the public policy branch within EPS, and it's part of the work plan, and they're happy to report today on that. Jared Riley and Ashley Cheslock will be reporting today, and I'll turn it over to Jared. Thank you.
Thank you, Acting GM. My name is Jared Riley. I'm the Acting Program Manager for Public Policy Development Services in the Emergency Protective Services Department. Our team is here today to present snowplow contractor licensing review, which includes recommendations to update the existing snowplow contractor licensing in the business licensing bylaw. For clarification, these establish requirements for snowplow contractors that are removing snow from private property and not municipal snow clearing operations, which are the purview of the Transportation Committee and the Public Works Department. I'm joined today by my colleague Ashley Cheslock, the bylaw review specialist that has led this review, and I would like to turn it over to Ashley to explain our findings and our proposed recommendations. Thank you. Merci. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Jared. Je voudrais commencer par remercier toutes les directions générales, les conseillers, les résidents et les secteurs d'activité pour leur collaboration apportée durant cet examen. This review is directed by Council as part of the 2023 to 2026 bylaw review work plan and asks staff to review noise and nuisance concerns, specifically the requirement for broadband backup alarms for private snowplow contractors, follow up on the results of the metal driveway marker pilot, and provide a recommendation on whether this type of material should be permanently included in the bylaw, and update and review the existing regulations to address any concerns related to consumer protection and public safety. Staff conducted a thorough bylaw review process, including issues identification, research, consultation, and extensive policy analysis. A jurisdictional scan was conducted, and municipalities with similar snow accumulations to Ottawa were reviewed. A public survey posted on Engage Ottawa received over 1,700 responses from residents, as well as consultations with the Accessibility Advisory Committee and the Ottawa Disability Coalition were completed. The industry was consulted 3 times by survey. First, to identify key issues on the file. Second, to receive feedback on potential policy options. And last, to understand how a licensing fee increase would impact their businesses. Staff engaged with other departments, including Public Works and Planning, to discuss feedback related to their areas of expertise. L'examen a porté sur des questions relatives au bruit, à la protection des consommateurs, à la sécurité publique et au suivi du projet pilote de bornes d'entrée métallique. Dans le cadre de cet examen, on a créé un processus de consultation avec le public, les membres de l'industrie, les représentants de la communauté, de l'accessibilité et les directions générales de la ville concernées. Je vais maintenant souligner les conclusions de l'examen ainsi que les recommandations au règlement. Next slide, please. I'd like to begin by outlining some of the key issues and recommendations to address these areas of concern. First, unauthorized snow dumping includes snow that is being removed from private property by contractors and being placed on the roadway, the sidewalk, public and private accessible parking spaces, as well as neighboring laneways or parcels of land that are privately owned. Residents shared their experiences and concerns with snowplow contractors dumping snow on their property without authorization, which has resulted in nuisance amongst neighbors, visibility and hazard conditions, and in some instances has created accessibility barriers by impeding private walkways and entrances. The current bylaw does not include provisions related to unauthorized snow dumping on private property. Therefore, staff are recommending creating an offense to prohibit contractors from this type of activity. An offense would occur if a snowplow contractor places snow on private property without authorization other than those of their clients or at an authorized snow disposal facility. Based on feedback from members of the accessibility community and advocacy groups, staff are also recommending prohibiting dumping snow on accessible parking spaces, including those that are located on private property, along with a 4-hour cleanup requirement for any snow that a contractor dumps on an accessible parking space or on public property, including the roadway and sidewalk. During engagement, we did not receive any comments of concern from the industry on these specific recommendations. Le dépôt illégal de la neige est l'une des questions clés sur ce dossier, qui comprend l'enlèvement et placement de la neige sur des terrains publics et privés. Les recommandations incluent l'interdiction de déverser la neige sur les terrains privés des non-clients et les espaces de stationnement accessibles, ainsi qu'une obligation de ramasser la neige déchargée sur les terrains publics et des espaces de stationnement accessibles dans un délai de 4 heures. To address consumer protection issues, staff also proposed 4 changes to the regulations. Upon application of a business license, the city issues a plate which must be visible and securely attached to the rear of a snowplow vehicle. Staff recommend introducing a sticker system that will be issued annually and must be affixed to this snowplow plate to avoid the misuse of expired plates and assist with identifying licensed contractors. In the existing regulations, snowplow vehicles are required to have their company name and telephone number printed on the side of their vehicles. Staff are proposing updates to the vehicle signage requirements to meet the city's accessible design standards. This includes things like larger size font and standards for color ratio. These vehicle signage standards have been implemented in other licensed business categories at the city to assist with identification and enforcement purposes. Staff also recommend a requirement for contractors to provide their clients with a copy of the regulations for increased awareness, as well as an increase of insurance coverage from $1 million to $2 million to align with similar licensed business categories at the city. The industry survey indicated high support for this change, as many already have this type of coverage or even higher. As part of this term's bylaw review work plan, staff were directed by council to review the results of the metal driveway marker pilot, which began back in 2017. The pilot received positive feedback given how metal markers are more durable, better for the environment, and more cost-effective. Therefore, the permanent adoption of metal driveway markers is also being recommended. Staff are proposing 2 other changes to update the driver marker provisions. For ease of enforcement and clarity, all driveway markers will be set at the same setback distance from the roadway, regardless of their material. This would be 5 feet from the edge of the sidewalk and 7 feet from the edge of the roadway where there is no sidewalk. And a new requirement for contractors and property owners to replace damage markers and clean up any debris that is left behind as a result of this damage is also being put forward as a recommendation. Nous recommandons l'adoption des balises d'entrée métalliques, limite de retrait de 5 pieds du bord du trottoir et de 7 pieds du bord de la chaussée et l'obligation de remplacer tous les balises endommagées. Lastly, Council directed to review whether broadband backup alarms should be a requirement for private snowplow contractors. The public survey demonstrated that 86% of residents said that there were no noise concerns with private contractors. The industry survey indicated strong opposition to prescribing broadband backup alarms given the cost and resource implications. Based on our consultations, we do not feel that there is enough policy rationale to require this type of technology. However, we are committed to continuing to monitor the issue of noise. Selon les résultats de constatation, nous ne recommandons pas d'imposer des avertisseurs de recul à large bande de fréquence. Dans le cadre de cet examen, nous avons également recommandé à des changements pour clarifier certaines définitions, notamment à ce qui concerne l'exemption pour les agriculteurs et la définition des chasse-neige. Next slide, please. Bylaw and regulatory services anticipate that the administration and enforcement of new regulations will require additional focus. No new positions are being requested, as an existing resource within the service can be redeployed from a program that has ended. This resource would assist with receiving service requests, investigating complaints, and monitoring how the new provisions are going. As per Council's user fee and charges policy, a slight increase to the licensing fee would be required in order to fully cost recover this new resource. The increase would be $18 to the license fee and $18 to the snowplow vehicle fee. While licensing fee increases are never popular, feedback from the industry survey determined that an increase below $20 for each would have a minimal impact. No industry respondents indicated that this would result in a failure to continue operating. Une augmentation des droits de permis serait nécessaire pour recouvrir les coûts d'une ressource pour l'administration et l'application des nouveaux règlements. L'augmentation serait de $18 pour le droit de permis et de $18 pour le frais du véhicule. Next slide, please. These regulations will come into force immediately and would be effective for this upcoming winter season. However, bylaw and regulatory services will be providing a grace period for enforcement of the vehicle signage requirements to ensure that contractors have sufficient time to comply. The city will communicate all regulatory changes to snowplow contractors with their license renewals, as well as update the consumer protection webpage on ottawa.ca with additional educational material related to best practice and regulatory changes for residents. Les règlements et les droits de permis entreront en vigueur immédiatement pour cet hiver, tandis que l'exigence sur les enseignes de véhicules seront appliquées progressivement afin de laisser le temps aux exploitants de chasse-neige de se conformer. La Ville mettrait à jour la page web de la protection des consommateurs sur ottawa.ca en s'ajoutant des formations sur les meilleures pratiques et les modifications réglementaires. This concludes our presentation of the Snowplow Contractor Licensing Review. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much to staff for the presentation today and all the work that went into revising the bylaw, the proposed revisions to the bylaw. It's appreciated. I don't believe there are any delegations for this item. Is that correct? There are no delegations. So happy to take questions from committee members. Councillor Plante and then Councillor Lulaf.
Oui, merci beaucoup pour la présentation. J'avais 2 questions pour vous. Quelles sont, disons, les plaintes les plus fréquemment de les gens appellent au sujet des snowplows? Et deuxièmement, est-ce qu'il y a une différence entre les plaintes dans les quartiers plus ruraux ou urbains, ou est-ce que c'est un peu toujours la même affaire partout dans la ville? Merci.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. D'après les données que nous avons, les plaintes les plus fréquentes consistent au placement de la neige déblayée là où la neige ne devrait pas être. Donc, sur les propriétés des voisins, sur la chaussée, sur les emplacements de stationnement. D'après ce que je comprends, il y a entre 700 et 800 plaintes par an de cette nature-là.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Luloff.
Thanks so much, Mr. Chair, and thanks to staff for the great work on this this updating of the bylaw. Certainly was something that was required, and really appreciate the great work that was done on this. I'm wondering, you know, you said that in the survey, 86% of residents said that they had no concerns with the backup alarms. Was 311 complaint data also taken into consideration? I know that I get significant complaints about private contractor backup alarms, especially when they're being used overnight on private property. I was just wondering if that was taken into consideration as well, if it was just the people that you engaged with on the survey.
Thank you, Chair. I can say that, yes, service request data was included in our consideration, and I will invite Director Chapman to speak about enforcement. But first, for clarification around the survey and the consultation results, it was 86% of respondents indicated they had no issues with noise. So it wasn't just specific to the broadband backup alarms.
Thank you.
Most of the noise around, most of the issues around noise were associated with plow scraping and blowers and equipment noise, not with backup beepers. I'll now invite Director Chapman to discuss enforcement. Oh.
Thanks, Jared. I really don't have anything else to add. That was what I was going to say, is that it's when we're looking at noise-related data for snow clearing and removal operations, it's often it's more about the, as Jared has mentioned, the scraping of the blades and the dump truck tailgates slamming and things like that, rather than the backup beepers.
Great. Okay. I mean, we live in a winter city, and removing snow is noisy, and it's just the way that it's going to be. We get it. The only thing noisier than removing the snow is getting into a car accident because we didn't do it properly. So I appreciate all the great work that's done both on public and private property. Our roads team is absolutely incredible, and I'm always impressed with the quality of work that we see from our private contractors on the most part as well. Please continue to monitor this. I receive quite a few complaints, especially for those like living adjacent to schools and other private property like malls and whatnot. The overnight snow clearing and the piling up of snow requires constant backing up, and those with bedrooms that face these properties are kept awake at night with the beeping. I'd suggested originally going to the broadband alarms because that's something that we've done at the city. I know that stage 2 has been wonderful with that too, because we received quite a few complaints about the backup alarms along the LRT corridor while work was going on. It carries a long way, especially in the winter when things are so dead and quiet. So I just ask that staff just continue to monitor that, as it's a bit of a menace to those that are trying to get a good night's sleep for their families and their kids. Thanks. Appreciate it very much, and great work again, Jared and team.
Thank you, Councillor. Vice Chair Hill, and then Councillor DeRoche.
Thank you very much, Chair Brockton. I would be interested to know how this is going to affect kind of the smaller businesses. So I know that, if you're asking industry, if it's a larger firm, they may be happy to go along with it because the economies of scale aren't going to impact them as substantially. But could you just speak to, how this could impact perhaps smaller players in terms of, cost, in terms of impact on their business? Or are you confident that that this is going to kind of impact on larger, medium, smaller snow removal companies in a way that's not going to be super significant?
Thank you, Chair. This was a key consideration when we looked at fee structure and the cost of the regulatory obligations that we're building into the system. An example of that is how the fees are structured. So the fee for each operator is increasing by $18. But the bulk of the fee increase comes in the per vehicle cost. So a larger contractor with more vehicles and more clients will pay more money for their licensing than a smaller contractor. And in that way, we can keep fairness within the industry based on the size of each small, medium, and large contractor.
No, thanks for that. And I guess my follow on then would be, do you have an appreciation for how those costs could impact on year over year subscription fees that are going to be paid by public members?
Thank you, Chair. Yes. With the low fee increase that we were able to achieve, once you split those costs between 50 or 100 or 200 consumers, it really is a minimal to negligible increase in the cost of snow removal service.
That's great. I appreciate your work on this. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Councillor DeLoche.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, these service providers are very busy given our winter climate, and they're certainly very busy in the Finley Creek and Riverside South area. You often see residents kind of pooling together to get the best price, and oftentimes these service providers are the first ones here prior to the city plows getting to the residential streets because they're working on arterials, and I find that they will often, if they've got a lot of customers, will even do part of the road, which I don't think we object to if it's done properly. I am concerned about complaints on nuisance in the sense that when they blow the snow, sometimes, especially when it gets very high, some of it may trickle over into the neighbor's lawn, and at the end of the day, it's probably not the end of the world, but as Mr. Chapman knows, you do get these people who are, in a conflict with their neighbor or what have you. And really, again, it's a minor infraction, but, I can't see us really being too heavy for situations when there's some small amount of snow that's inadvertently put over the border, if you will, on the line. So how are you going to deal with that, Mr. Chapman?
Mr. Chair, Councillor, thank you for the question. Again, enforcement discretion is very important here. It's, there are situations, especially when we have a significant amount of snow in a short period of time, might be several snow events without any melt in between. As you've stated, it's difficult sometimes to contain all the snow on your property, and we do see situations where there's snow that may roll off a bank and onto a neighbor's property. But in those circumstances, on a case-by-case basis, with a officer conducting an investigation, they would use enforcement discretion there.
Yeah, thank you for that, and that's kind of the way I would see it. I don't think we want to have people out with the measuring sticks for these kind of minor nuisances, but what won me over for this was obviously the concerns around accessibility and the barriers that we're putting in place, and not having an accessible city. So that's where I think the focus should be. I was pleased to hear that there was some good consultations with the industry, and they're not here today. So that I think is a sign that we are being reasonable in terms of steps that we're proposing and the regime that we're putting forward. But I am concerned about the supply of these providers. Again, I know in the Finley Creek and Riverside South areas, it can be tough sometimes to find a provider where people want to have the subscription service. I know for seniors especially, the windrows are extremely challenging, and they rely on these service providers. So are you concerned that in any way that this might limit the number of providers, and that there might be providers that would exit the industry, or that this would be a barrier for entry? Because we want to have as many providers as possible, quality ones, to have some competitive prices, but also meet the demand that is out there, especially for seniors.
Thank you, Chair. We have not heard this concern in neither the public survey nor the industry survey. We also didn't hear from any industry members that the proposed regulations would result in a failure to continue operating. Okay, good. Let's keep an eye on that, because this is a critical service, right? Again, especially for seniors in the windrows that are very challenging after a big storm.
I know we were looking at possibly some regulations with respect to landscaping companies, and oftentimes the winter maintenance people become landscapers, and we've got a huge problems with not all landscapers, but there's a small segment that give their clients bad advice and tell them that they can chop down a tree, tell them that they can pave their entire driveway, and that's just bad advice because it violates our bylaws, and puts the homeowner in a jam. So I'm interested in looking at how we can have some better regulation. But I think that these two need to be dovetailed so that if we are regulating the winter, and we do affect the same companies because they do summer work, just want to make sure that we're going to kind of have a harmonized system so that's not too much paperwork for what is basically the same company that is all season in terms of work.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, absolutely. Our review of potential regulations for landscapers is set to start later this fall and early next year. So that we'll report on the results of that work next year. But yes, absolutely. The affected industries we suspect do dovetail. So as part of this review, Ashley's collected some preliminary information that will help us hit the ground running in reaching out to the landscaper industry as well.
Yeah, thank you. And let's make it easier for them so that we're not making them fill out a pile of paper for one and a pile of paper for another and having to go to one part of the city for one permit and another part of the city for a different permit. So I appreciate that there'll be some effort to try and be a one-stop and hopefully have some harmonization in terms of the administration for these companies. I'm going to support it today, Mr. Chair. Like I said, I was originally concerned about a regime that really is just focused on nuisance, but we've heard very clearly that this impacts accessibility for our city, and I think this is how we walk the talk, that we want to have an accessible city and dealing with some of the barriers that come about as a result of some poor performance of snow removal. So thank you very much. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor, for that. If I may ask a few questions of my own, there's no requirement by this bylaw to have companies truck snow away on residential or commercial or any type of property that's being serviced that doesn't have sufficient space to store snow. Newer developments in my ward have small front yards, and those front yards, when snow is piled, breach sight lines. There are concerns about water penetration on abutting properties in the spring. We're silent on that, or the bylaw is silent on that. Is that correct?
That's correct. So the issue of snow disposal storage is not included in this bylaw review.
Okay, thank you. And just the metal markers that you're recommending be implemented to replace the existing fiberglass or plastic markers, is there a period where we'll allow companies, like if this passes, is the expectation that the markers that go in place next month will be metal, or is there a year's transition period to allow companies to purchase them? And maybe some don't know where to go and it takes time. So what's the grace period?
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. So just to clarify, the use of other types of materials are listed in the bylaw. So it's not replacing existing material markers that they have. It's just through the pilot project, is just making it legal now to use metal markers as well.
Thank you for that clarification. That's good. Any other speakers to this item? Okay, the staff recommendation for us is that the Emergency Preparedness and Protective Services Committee recommend that council approve amendments to the city's licensing bylaw number 2002-189 as amended, pertaining to snowplow contractors, including new definitions and the replacement of Schedule 4 as described in this report and in the general form set out in document 1. Is this item carried?
Carried.
All right, thank you. We have dealt with item 6. Item 7 is in-camera items. Any items requiring us to go in camera? Seeing none. Item 8, notices of motion. Does anyone have a notice of motion? Seeing none, item 9, inquiries. Vice Chair Hill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. To the Director of Bylaw and Regulatory Services, Emergency and Protective Service Department, the inquiry reads, on June 14th, 2023, Council approved a compromise motion to introduce a new limit of 3 garbage bins or items per household for curbside pickup. The rollout for this new change will begin on September 30th and be fully in place by the end of the year. As residents adjust to this new limit, we could see an increase of illegal dumping where individuals take trash above and beyond the new limit and leave it in their neighbors' lawns, in parks, on the side of the road, in the right of way, or at commercial sites as well. To that end, could Bylaw and Regulatory Services please address the following questions to assure residents that all appropriate measures will be taken to address this issue? 1, what is the city's projection on how the frequency of illegal dumping will change when the new 3 garbage bins limit is in place? 2, how many cases of illegal dumping were successfully fined in Ottawa in 2022 and 2023? 3, does Bylaw have the resources required to sufficiently respond to an increase in illegal dumping? And 4, what is the current fine for illegal dumping under provincial regulation, and what steps can the city take to increase those fines? Are you currently taking those steps? And if so, where are we in that process?
Thank you, Vice Chair, for that. Does anyone else have any inquiries? Seeing none. Before we adjourn, I just want to give a heads up that our next meeting will be on October the 17th. At this meeting, we will consider the review of potential regulations for vapor product retailers, the Public Safety Service 2023 Annual Report, and the 911 2023 Annual Report. Our November meeting will be dedicated for consideration of the 2025 draft budget. So I look forward to seeing you at those upcoming meetings. And I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge that Fire Prevention Week will be October 6th to 12th this year. This year's campaign is Smoke Alarms, Make Them Work for You. Everyone should have a smoke alarm and carbon monoxide alarm on each floor of their home and outside of sleeping areas. This is the perfect opportunity to install them if you don't have them, test them if you do, and replace them if needed. Thank you, colleagues. There is no other business before us, so our meeting today is adjourned.